This conference will now be recorded.
Are you in record mode?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Today's presentation is on what engineers ought to know. It's a contractor's perspective. I hope to offer you something that you can take with you that you find valuable. This just stopped working.
Yeah, this is the pause that we were talking about. Hang on here. By the way, anybody who's online, we're just going through technical stuff. We're going to start at 11:30. Oh,
Huh. Why would it do that?
yeah, we've run into this in the past where I don't know. Okay, now try it with your.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Maybe what we'll do is we'll do the first one.
Sure.
And if it's not progressing,
Yep.
then just kind of give me, a sign and I'll do it manually.
Okay, sounds good. And remember that pad doesn't work, so.
Oh, yeah, okay, and, okay. All right, we'll stop recording and,
This conference will now be recorded.
Good? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Most of you are virtual. I was just saying it's hard for me to get used to speaking or presenting to a group that I can't see because that feedback is important, but it's the wave of the future, virtual meetings. Your handouts may differ a little bit from mine because as normal, when I prepare a presentation, I make little tweaks the night before to better meet the needs of the audience. So my name is Tom Fisher, and I'm here to present something I hope that you guys can take away from this, what engineers ought to know, a contractor's perspective. I don't want to seem too presumptuous to think that I know more than you, but I'd like to offer you my perspective on things I've found being in the business over the last 43 years. In modifying this presentation, most of this was built before modifying for this group's particular needs. I was trying to title this presentation, and I started out with some things that young and seasoned professionals should have in their toolbox, and it didn't quite fit where I was going when I was done with it. So I thought, well, I'll change it to what engineers ought to be cognizant of. And then I realized I didn't know how to spell cognizant. So we're going to stick with what engineers ought to know. And again, I'm not trying to be too presumptuous with what I'm going to offer you, but I do hope that you find it useful. Per Craig's request, we have added the Ashrae Code of Ethics. I've been an Ashrae member since, I think, 94. I haven't ever read this, but this last sentence here, and we shall avoid all real or perceived conflicts of interest. That's interesting to me. So I had not, I think everybody has read this before. Okay. Many thanks to our generous hosts. Wish we had more people to take advantage of the food here. The four of us here have a lot to eat. So thank you, Proctor Sales. Thank you very much. Okay, normally when I present in person, I like to pull the group just to get an idea of the type of engagement I can expect to receive. So engineers, I might need your help with this, Craig, from the group that's online virtually. I mean, what's the percentage of engineers? Can you identify that?
not off the two-letter.
Okay, well, we'll just run with it. I see we have a contractor, subcontractor, Long Technologies, and you guys are basically control systems.
control, security.
Okay.
Full mechanical.
Great, great,
side of things.
great. And Jan, Glenn, good to meet you. Good to see you. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm Tom Fischer. I've been in the business for well over 40 years. And I am partial owner of Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company, AFCO. Many of you may know me. Came to Fairbanks, Alaska in November of 1967, right after the flood. Mid to late 70s, my father operated a gold mine. And in the summers, I would work hard surfacing the wear plates on that earth moving equipment. I was in high school in the late 70s. In the 80s, I began my apprenticeship with local 375 plumbers and pipe fitters in Fairbanks. That was a 4-year apprenticeship program back then. Now it's 5. Journeyed out in 84 and worked as a welder plumber out of the hall, mostly in Prudhoe Bay, working as a welder. In 1987, I came to work for Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company by the guy who owned it back then. We'll call him JG, the Gibber. And so he became my mentor for the next 20 years. So I started with the company that he started in 1982, started there in 1987. And I have been either a full-time or part-time employee of that company since 1987. 1988, I enrolled in college courses toward my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and earned my degree, my bachelor's degree in 92. Went to work for USKH. It's owned by Stan now, I think for the last 10 or 12 years. It was USKH had branches in Palmer, Anchorage. Fairbanks was mostly mechanical. Most of the mechanicals were stationed in Fairbanks. Some of you may know USKH or be familiar with that. The principal that I worked for was Scott Bell. He was the head of the mechanical engineering department, and he came to me in 1996. I had been there at least a couple years, a little more than 2 years, working as an EIT. And as you know, the EITs are the ones that do 85% of the work that gets spit out of the office. And Scott Bell came to me and he said, "Tom, I understand that you're working for a contractor." I go, "Well, yeah, on the weekends I fabricate for Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company." The owner would have fab sheets, he'd have the material, he'd had a shop. I'd just go in Saturday morning at 6 a.m. and I'd weld till 5 in the afternoon, in the evening. I'd do the same thing on Sunday and then report for work on Monday for USKH. He goes, "That presents a conflict of interest, so we need you to quit, terminate your employment with the contractor." I came back on Monday and I said, "Scott, you're right, I understand. I'm giving my notice." He goes, "Oh, you gave your notice?" I go, "No, I'm giving you my notice right now." And so Scott was a little bewildered by that. He couldn't understand me going to school for 4+ years. I was also taking classes toward a master's and to give it all up to go be a contractor. But I truly was not having fun as an EIT. I didn't enjoy, I like building stuff. I like things I can put my hand, tangible things, not the blueprint. Well, they don't make blueprints anymore, but not the prints. In 2002, I became part owner of Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company and started running jobs as a project manager. I had taken several courses and did some studies at University of Texas, Austin under project management. And that's how I learned my project management role. And and in 2015 became half owner with someone that my partner right now is someone I hired in 1998 as a yardbird. He was new to the area, actually came over from Russia, could hardly understand him, but today he owns half the company. So a success story there for him. And I plan to probably retire at the end of 24. I'll be done with my commitment to Aaron, to AFCO. This is what we're not going to discuss today. This is not in my wheelhouse. I am not strong in any of this. As a matter of fact, yeah, we won't be talking about any of this at all. What we will talk about today is contractor hierarchy, how things flow down in the contracting world. Vertical construction bid preparation process. I'll go over the process by which we go through to go from reviewing an invitation to bid to submitting a proposal to a prime contractor or a client. We do work as a general. I have a general contractor's license as well as a specialty contractor's license. So if the project is more than 75% mechanical, I'll probably prime it myself too. So we do probably 15% of our revenue is acting as a prime contractor. We'll look at some project delivery methods in use today. I'll probably introduce you to one that I think is going to increase in popularity. There's basically 4 main delivery methods for projects. I'm going to offer you some lessons that I've learned over the last 42 years. And hopefully you'll get some key takeaways and something that you find valuable that you can use in your everyday life and considerations moving forward. Okay, contractor hierarchy. Prime contractor has a contract with the client or the owner of the project. Owner has a project he wants to build, and he has already contracted with the design firms. So this is set up more like a bid build, what we used to call plan and spec. Now it's called bid build. Actually, it's evolved again, and now they call it design bid build. That's how this is set up. So you have the prime contractor, or people use it interchangeably, the general contractor, but actually many times a prime contractor, and then he will subcontract to a general contractor to do the work of the general contractor. And so the prime contractor acts as an administrator of the project. Under the prime contractor, he's going to contract with his first tier subs. Those are the people that represent a large portion of the project. The M sheets, the P sheets for the mechanical, the electrical, the E sheets, and then they'll have second tier subs. We always sub out sheet metal, insulators. Many times the control outfit is a sub to us. And basically the mechanical contractor becomes the coordinator for those scopes, okay? So vertical construction bid preparation process. First thing is you get an announcement or you see an announcement. There's many different sources that we utilize to make us aware of projects. If it's not on those resources, then a lot of times those projects are probably designed, built, and the owner has a general contractor already in mind that they have faith in. And so we don't see those on the street. But a lot of the projects that we offer on, we see project announcements, or you'll see an invitation to bid. Alaska is a very small and very isolated group. It's not like when work dries up in Fairbanks, I can drive to the next town 40 miles away and do another job, you know. So it's a very tight-knit community, and relationships are extremely important. When I assess a project announcement, I look at the project and I look at my current workload. What do I have on the books right now? How long are those commitments? What resources are going to be tied up while I'm performing that contract or those contracts? And sometimes that becomes, it's kind of a guessing game. Last year, we have 2 categories within our company. Small projects and large projects. Small projects right now are anything under 50,000. We did over 75 projects under $50,000 last year. The sheer coordination required to do those small projects are, I mean, it's a lot of work. I'd much rather bite into a large $3 or $4 million project, and that way I can focus on that. But that's the way it is. In Fairbanks, we just recently completed the buildup for the F-35 squadrons at Eielson, the missile field at Greeley, and the early warning sites in Clear are being finished up right now. So we had a lot of work the last few years, and a lot of that work has dried up. It's done. So now in my company, we have to adapt to that situation. And we have projects at Atka, Dillingham, Prudhoe Bay, Galena. So we have to look at areas where we don't really particularly enjoy working, but that's where the work is, to keep the machine fed. So I will look at the current workload commitments and the owner, the client considerations. Is this an owner I want to work for? For instance, if I do work for the Fairbanks North Star Borough, specifically the school district, they have a clause in their agreement that limits my markup on change order. So I had a project a few years ago where the contract was just a little over $1 million, and they presented some change order work. For markup, and there was less than, I mean, I couldn't make money on a change order. And that's number one sin in contracting, is never lose money on a change order. You can't lose, if you lose money on a change order, you're not doing it right. So again, you have to work the system. You know, I think it was like 5% for direct work. It's crazy. So prime contractor considerations. I'm going to look and see who's interested. And at this point, you may not know, but you can find a bidders list of who's interested in the project, or at least who's made an inquiry into the project. Sometimes I have a list of prime contractors, general contractors that I will not bid to. So for instance, I got a call one day. I'd been working on a it wasn't a design build, it was a bid project, but it was a complicated bid build project. It was pretty significant. And I got a call the day before this project proposal was due. I had been working with 4 other general contractors for over a month on this project. I get a call from BW General Contracting. I'm going to call him BW. And BW says, Tom, I'd like to get your proposal. Are you bidding this project still? I go, yeah, I'm bidding it. But quite honestly, I have never spoke to anybody within your firm, and it's very unlikely I'm going to offer you a proposal. There's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of things that we haven't talked about on this project. I don't want any holes left on bid day. He goes, well, I'd really like to have your I had experience with this contractor in the past. And I said, BW, how about this? How about I just take my proposal and send it right over to BS Plumbing and save you a step? And the phone got quiet, and he hung up. And that's perfect, touchdown. I haven't had a call from him yet since then. So that's exactly what I want, because I have no intention. What he does is he'll take my proposal and he'll give it to his favorite proposal, his favorite contractor, subcontractor. And if I had that opportunity, number one, it's unethical. Number two, yeah, you can always, oh, that's his price. Well, I can do it for what, 50,000 less, no problem. Well, that's I don't like to do business like that. So, but prime contractor considerations are an issue. And also, sometimes I may give a different number to one prime than another for various reasons. There's different variables. So my number on the street on bid day is not, my number to you may be different than my number to you. And that's not unethical, because I could justify that reasonably in the contracting world. Geographical and logistical considerations. Is the project in Galena? Is it in Dead Horse? Is it in Atka? That's a huge variable right there in determining whether I'm going to bid the project. Timeline considerations, period of performance. Is it reasonable? Expected notice to proceed. When can I expect to receive a yay or a nay on this project? Is it going to be 60 days like the Corps? They'll get a proposal and you won't hear from them for weeks. You know, and then all of a sudden I'll get an email on a project I completely forgot about. So when I was back here doing current workload commitments, I didn't even consider that project. I thought it was a dead fish. Liquidated damages. What kind of liquidated damages are going to be assessed? And as a subcontractor, especially, you have very little control over the LDs that are going to be assessed to you. It's kind of a very subjective means when they are. LDs don't normally happen. And also, according to state law, the owner of a contract cannot assess LDs on a punitive basis. It has to be an actual loss. Okay. And the duration of the project. What's the expected completion? How long are my resources going to be tied up performing this contract? And also future workload commitments that I've already made but have not yet begun to perform. So these are all things that I haven't made a decision whether I'm going to bid this project yet. Okay, and the labor resources available. Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company is a union contractor. That means that we get one of our. So when you put a project together, you got materials, you got equipment, you got subs, and you have labor. Okay, those are your four main components that make up your proposal. Those are your costs. And we're a union contractor, so if the work up in Prudhoe Bay is really heavy at the time and we got a lot of work in town, then the quality of the craftsmanship that you're going to get out of the union hall is probably going to be pretty low. I mean, you can expect that. We have about 8 field hands that we keep busy, and they know how our operation runs. And so we rely on them to oversee their dispatch on a job-to-job basis. But labor resources available, that's a big one as well. Again, you're trying to look into your crystal ball. Am I going to bid this as a sub or as a prime? That's another consideration. Like I said earlier, if it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% mechanical, I'm probably going to bid as a prime. Because when you bid a contract as a subcontractor to a prime contractor, there's a lot of things you lose ability to control. So as a subcontractor, it's a little tougher. So next step, we're going to obtain, we decide to go forward. Yeah, this looks like a project I'm in it. I may be interested in offering on, and the next step is I'm going to obtain the project documents, the plan specifications, an agreement if it's available. So that's not a huge step in the commitment way, but I still have to spend more time assessing the project. I'm going to do a thorough assessment of the project specific requirements. These are requirements that are specific to this project, that are not general requirements, but are you know, if it's got special construction, special timelines. So that's usually a high priority issue that helps me assess whether I'm going to bid the project. Quality of the design. When I get a set of plans, I'll open them up and I go straight to the M sheets. I may look at the notes and I may look at the architectural floor plan to get just a feel for the building, but I'll skip right to the M sheets. And the first thing I do is I look at the stamp. Who did the design? Who stamped it? And then I look over in the title block and I see, you know, designed, checked. I look at those and see if I can identify those people. That's a huge one as well. And I'm not going to name any names, but I've had some issues in the past with some of the designs. We just completed an 8-bay renovation out at Eielson for the F-35s, and this particular design had some flaws in it right off the bat. Number one was the steam system was entirely screwed up. Designing steam system is a lost art. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of the engineers aren't trained in steam systems. but the Fort Wainwright, Eielson, I believe some parts of J-Bear have a base-wide distribution steam system, and you have to know when you're designing a steam system what's entailed in some of the finer points. Eielson has an aid to the designers. It's called the Eielson Design Guide, and it gives, if it's read, it gives a lot of the pertinent information needed to design things like steam system properly, specific to Eielson. That's a big one. One of the tools I don't have with my presenter, is that correct? Okay. Is the timestamp. I know how far into the program I am. Division 1, general requirements. I will spend ample time, more if needed, to get familiar with. And I definitely want to look at the special and supplementary conditions. Again, those will key me in on the things that are specific to this project. I will look in Division 1, I'll look at the bonding and insurance requirements. As a sub, we're not required to bond the project, and we'll get into bonding later, but sometimes if the general contractor that we're working for has a lot of work, more than usual, and their bonding capacity is near its limit, then the general contractors will many times come down to their first tier subs and ask them to bond their own work. Then they can take that scope off of their bonding capacity and free that up for another project. That happens a lot. Not a great deal of subs have bonding limits that are significant. Obviously Long, nationwide company, they're going to have, I mean, their bonding capacity is huge because they're nationwide and they share in all their projects. But every once in a while, I do end up using my bonding capacity as a sub, always as a prime. Insurance requirements, sometimes different projects have different limits on their general liability limits that they want you to carry. And I always look at those, and that's not really a big thing. It's just a higher premium for to extend your limits. And then I will jump to scope specific division assessment. Those are the divisions that I'm going to work in, 22, 23. I'll look at 25. I don't usually get into 25. A lot of times the 25 is the controls, integrated controls. And then I'll look at outside utilities. And then this division here is usually reserved for special construction specific to the project. I'll look at those divisions, see if, so now at this point, I still haven't decided whether it's a go or no go. At this point, if it is a go, then issues that may be considered. Okay, I still haven't decided yet. And I apologize, I can't see my presenter screen, so it kind of feeds me on my notes and everything and what's up next. So is it reasonable? Sometimes an owner doesn't really have a really good, I mean, I'm sure in the design world, you guys get owners come to you all the time and they really don't know for sure what they want. And they don't realize what they're actually asking for and the price tag associated with that. Take BIM, for example. BIM had some popularity in the past. I think there's a place for BIM. I don't think that BIM should be on every job because the owner doesn't want to pay for it. Somebody's going to pay for the BIM. You're actually building the job before you build the job. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes manpower. Okay, BIM is a great thing if everybody's in. It only takes one contractor to screw the BIM process. But a lot of times the owner doesn't want to pay for that, but they want it. They want it, but they don't want to pay for it. Does the project requirements, do they allow a reasonable amount of time to offer a responsible proposal? A lot of times the design is good. I spent 18 months in design or 12 months in design. They put it out for bid. They want a number in 3 weeks, and it's going to be a 2-year job. I don't have the time to put together a responsible proposal in 3 weeks, maybe. And so this may be a no-go issue. If I see a project that I'm interested in and I just don't have the time to do a good job of offering a proposal, I'll call the owner. I will get into contact with them and say, hey, is there any way we can get more time on this? It just doesn't seem right. And the problem is that when they started the project, they didn't have intentions of leaving 3 weeks for the proposal phase. But what happened is the design went into the proposal phase. They have a due date they need to start the project on. Those due dates are very important, especially in our environment, what we have here. It's not like we're in Florida or California where we build year round. We need to break ground as soon as possible to get it enclosed, to get it wintered so we can build the job in the winter and we're not eating up manpowers non-productively because of the environment that we're working in. I'll look at the competition at this point. I'll have a pretty good feel for who's going to look at this. I'm a union contractor. There are contractors out there that if they want the job, I can't beat them. It could be a non-union thing. They're non-union, and we'll get into the pay scales and how that trickles down. And if it's a project, like if I bid a project in Kodiak, I've got a few key subcontractors there. If I see them on the list, I'm not even going to waste my time. And I'll show you why I won't waste my time. Project specific items. Is the Buy American Act in play? That can be huge right now with supply chain issues. Huge. Proprietary design considerations. Sometimes those things will, when a designer, at the request of the owner, usually they put in proprietary language. That's what they want. Well, guess what happens when you're proprietary? Your number goes up. If you don't have any competition. Is the anticipated schedule reasonable? And again, as a subcontractor, sometimes that the building of the schedule, and in my proposal, my scope letter, I always ask to be part of the scheduling. I need to be part of the scheduling. Our work is fairly significant in the overall scope, and I want to be included. But I want to know if we can actually do that. Are we going to look at LDs? Do I need to build LDs into my proposal? And that's never efficient. But okay, so I've committed. I've got the project. Now at this time, all the time that I've spent, and all the resources and money I've spent to this point, still at risk. Now I'm going to move into preparing the proposal. So I build a cost sheet and my widget counter to do a takeoff on all they're counting pipe lengths and elbows, and I'm getting equipment quotes based on the equipment schedules. So that person's doing that. So now I've got some actual labor spent in the effort toward submitting a proposal for this project. I'm spending money. I'm going to reach out to the second tier subs, my insulators, my sheet metal guys, specialty subs, concrete cutters, blah, 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 whatever I need. I'll send that. I'll give them an invitation to bid. And a lot of times these guys have already seen this from somebody else, maybe. I'm not the only one looking at the project in this process. So I will have a conversation, usually via email. So I make sure that I convey the same message to everyone, the same. I will send out an email and let them know I'm interested in the project. This is what I see as your scope. Please confirm these are the equipment items you're going to handle, and this is the scope, and this is our delineation between your scope and my scope. I'll send equipment schedules out and the takeoffs that my widget counter put together. Usually it's a huge spreadsheet of fittings, piping, hangers, also all the equipment on the equipment schedule. I'll send it out to my vendors to get pricing. And I try to get that done a week into the process, if I can. There are reasons I can't sometimes, or I need to amend that. And then determine direct labor values. Every contractor has their own way of reaching labor values. Aaron Plumbing and Heating Company was started in 1982. So we use our own database based on when I finish a job, I will pull some data and look at the timesheets and see what we spent where. So that's where those labor values come from. And a lot of other contractors do the same thing. Some contractors use bidding estimating software that's taken off a national average, and then they'll apply a multiplier for their specific company specific needs. I'm going to look at supply chain issues. That's become increasingly important since the world fell apart. And I don't know, I got a proposal for a lift station the other day, and it was 16 and a half weeks out. So this is a project that was shelved from 2019. In 2019, that same exact equipment had a 3.5 week lead time. So these are real issues, and these are dynamic issues, and these are issues that are evolving every day, especially with the latest Ukraine mess. You know, I don't want to get into politics, but it is a real effect, and it's a variable that I have to consider when I bid a job. Supply chain issues are becoming increasingly important. If I'd have given this presentation 2 years ago, that probably I wouldn't prioritize that much. It wasn't that big a deal. That's in my proposal. Yep, 90 days, 90 days. And because of that, nobody's going to accept my proposal. If I'm bidding a job and it's a core project, I'm not going to hear for 60 days at least. I know that. So my clients want an offer that's good for 90 days. So what do? I'm going to put a higher factor in my contingency column of my cost sheet. Okay. So what can I expect? Okay, so one of the big elements in our cost to do a job is labor. It's huge. I know the cost of my labor that I have guys working today. That contract goes into negotiation on July 1st. It's going to change. I don't know what I'm going to be paying guys on July 2nd right now. I don't know what their package is going to be worth. I don't know, and it's going to change again July 2nd, July 1st of 23, and again 24. So if I have a long project, I have to look back historically on what the benefit package changes were and make some educated guesses on where my labor costs are going to be. Oh, I'm sorry. ODCs. These are other direct costs that are in my cost sheet. These are things like freight, room and board, per diem, things that aren't in the 4 columns that I told you about before: the labor, the material, the equipment, the subs. Sometimes the ODCs can be significant. And then again, contingencies that we talked about. I'm going to put contingency factor in the bid based on supply chain issues, based on unknown labor costs. And then at this point, I should be able to perform a thorough review of the second tier proposals. That's where I compare apples to apples. I look for scope misses in my subs. This sub has man lifts, this sub doesn't. Do I need a lot of man lifts? Well, yeah, everything's 30 feet in the air. So now, if I accept this sub proposal, I have to provide their labor with man lifts. Okay, so that may, yeah, they're cheaper on bid day, but not if I add in everything. So we have to do a thorough review of the second tier proposals to make sure that this proposal is the same as this proposal. At face value, the price at the end of the proposal may not be the lowest price. So there's things that I have to add into my sub work that I'm going to take care of.
Typically see that in their exclusions.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm doing. I'm reviewing their inclusions, their inclusions, their exclusions, their scope delineation. Absolutely, yeah, that's in there, and that's what I'm doing. I'm comparing this guy's exclusions to this guy's exclusions. So, then we build a cost sheet, put all the costs down, and assemble everything. And so, getting the value, the cost of a project, that's not what goes on your proposal. That's your cost. Okay. So then you've got markup. You've got all those other variables that we talked about that you, again, we're in the business to make money so that we can be here next year to do the same thing, right? I try to get my questions out as early as I can. If I see some issues that need to be clarified on the plans or specifications or redundant information in two different parts of the plans or the design, I'm going to ask those questions, and hopefully the owner will have time to issue an amendment or an addendum to the bidding documents. Review of the amendments and addenda, that's a huge thing. You want to make sure that you have everything in hand. It's so much easier than it was 30 years ago, with the advent of the internet and email. And I mean, you just look up, hey, it's bid day, any new amendments, you know? Oh yeah, here's a new amendment, just got issued this morning. Oh, they put the job off for a week, you know, and they added this verbiage. It happens all the time, you know? That's important. Review of the amendments. When you offer your proposal letters, you're going to list your amendments that you're acknowledging on that's right up front. You know, if a general contractor gets my proposal and there's 6 amendments and I'm acknowledging 1, 2, and 3, you can bet I'm going to get a phone call. Hey, I need you to acknowledge 4, 5, and 6. Like, well, I haven't seen 4, 5, and 6. You know, where, so you got to do your homework and make sure you're on top of the amendments and addenda that are issued by the owner.
Is there a deadline they have for adding them amendments?
Yeah. Well, and if they go beyond that deadline, yeah, usually it's 10 days before the proposal on most projects. If they issue an amendment 7 days before the proposal, they're probably going to extend the bid due proposal date. That's usually what happens, unless the amendment is insignificant. And a lot of times, I'll show you on the DOL labor sheet what happens and why some of those amendments are not significant enough to put off the proposal due date. Those are changes in labor values because another union signed a contract after the date of the issued labor values sheet was, you know. So everybody's got different due dates on their contract, their project labor agreements. Determining markup, that's something I do. That's not my widget counter. That's not my bidder. That's me. And I'm the one that prepares the proposal. I'm the one signing the proposal. I'm the one that's honoring the proposal. So determining the markup is something that I do. And again, that's taken into consideration a lot of variables, all those things we talked about, market conditions, logistics, supply chain issues. That markup is we have 2 parts of markup. We've got profit and we've got overhead. My overhead value is pretty much fixed. It changes a couple, not percentage points, but tenths of percentage points from year to year. You know, if your overhead goes up or down, you put more staff on or you got rid of staff. So the overhead value is part of your markup. The other one is the profit. And that is a risk reward assessment that we do. Okay, how bad do I want this job? Well, if I don't get this job, you know, 3 of my 8 key personnel are not going to be working for me. I'm going to give them up to somebody else. So I really want this job. I want to keep my key core crew guys employed. You know, I don't know how many times I've had them. You can only sweep the floor in the shop so many times, you know, but they're still working for me because I don't want to give them up. At this point, I'll do a very thorough research of viable prime contractors. In the past, I have had the best, most responsible proposal as a mechanical sub for a project, and I didn't get it in the hands of the right prime contractor. I didn't get the job. Had they had my proposal, I would have had the job. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at everybody and getting my proposal out to everybody that I want to. We talked about earlier, I'm not going to give it to everybody, maybe. There are reasons. You know, and then putting it all together, a detailed review. So misses, you got misses in your proposal, in your scope, in your cost sheet. That means money. You lose money. Where does that lost money come from? It comes from your profit, part of your markup. Check it again. I'll have my partner, before I send a proposal out, I'll send him a copy of my cost sheet and my proposal. And I'll usually give him 24 to 36 hours to look at it. And that's because him and I it's a partnership. So it's always try to have a second set of eyes, fresh set of eyes, look at a proposal. So there's two things that I send out to the prime contractors. The first thing is a scope letter that explains what I intend to do, my points of delineation, my inclusions, my exclusions. It's going to define the scope with project-specific narrative. The scope letter doesn't have pricing. Pricing comes in with the proposal. So project-specific exclusions and inclusions, general exclusions and inclusions, these are things that I normally have on my scope letter: painting, electrical, dirt work, excavation, asbestos abatement, you know, things like that. Those are not in that's not my forte. I put pipe in. Assumptions and clarifications. I'll make assumptions about the project if I'm not clear about the message that I got from the bid documents. I'll make assumptions that this scope letter is based on these assumptions. And that gives the general contractor an opportunity to say, hey, no, I don't see it that way. You know, I may have a statement in my scope letter that says, in the spirit of competition, I bid this project at 40 hours a week. I have not included overtime. Let me know if you want me to include overtime. Again, at this point, I don't have a lot of control over the schedule. I don't build a schedule. I'd like to be part of building the schedule so I can figure out if I do need to put overtime. So overtime is 1.5 times the standard value, the standard rate, the straight time rate. And the funny thing is, when my guys are working overtime, I'm not getting 1.5 times the production. Okay, so my labor values when I'm building my cost sheet have to reflect that. If overtime is being worked the entire project, we're human. Okay, the guys get tired. Your production values even go lower. You can realize I found this to be true, that you can realize a reduction of over 25% in productivity from working a 40-hour week to a 60-hour week over a 3-week time period. They're just going to produce less. Well, when I build my cost sheet, if I don't put that in there, guess what? That's coming out of my profit. Okay, you keep chopping away at your profit, pretty soon you write a check out to do the job. Final review of the scope letter. This scope letter, well, I'll get to that. So a lot of times, if it's you're not familiar or you haven't done a lot of work with this prime contractor, your scope letter is like a resume. It's your first real contact with that. So you want it to look good, you know. You want to make sure it's complete. You want to make sure it's concise. You want to make sure that the person's going to read it. You can't send them a 10-page scope letter and expect them to have any input. They're going to look at this and they're going to look at the guy that sent a 3-page scope letter, and you're probably not going to get read or considered. Okay, now we sent the scope letter in. Contractor knows what I intend to do and how I intend to do it. We're done at 1? So now it's time to get ready to submit the proposal. The proposal doesn't look a lot different than the scope letter, other than it's got the pricing. You may make some changes to your proposal, and if you do make changes from your proposal to from your scope letter, you should definitely, within the body of the email that you send your proposal, let them know I've made this change, and this change. And I usually bold any change in verbiage from my proposal or from my scope letter to my proposal. You don't want any extraneous information being transmitted without, due diligence toward letting them know that I made this change. Keeping your subs, vendors, suppliers on schedule. Okay, so there is the timing of sending in your proposal, and that flows down to your supplier sending you a number. So unfortunately, in the contracting world, here's what happens. I send my proposal to a general contractor that I haven't worked with, and I send it 2 days before the bid date. Well, it happens. My number gets to somebody else. They feed my number to another sub. Well, guess what? That sub comes in just underneath. He's like 2% underneath me. Okay, so same holds true for the vendors and suppliers. I may not get my my proposal or my pricing from my vendor because they want to make sure that XYZ company doesn't get a hold of it. And there's a lot, it happens a lot. Unfortunately, it's unethical, but it happens. And so the timing of your proposal to your prime is imperative. Prime contractors want a scope letter minimum 48 hours prior to the proposal due date. I try to do it sooner. There's really no risk in sending it out sooner. It's just that I don't have all the information within 48 hours. I may not have that information from my subs, for instance. So I want to get that scope letter in front of them so they have plenty of time to ask me questions and we can clarify things and I can make changes to my scope if I need to. Prime contractors want proposals 6 to 12 hours prior to proposal due time. And that's reasonable. But again, because of cost sharing or proposal sharing, I may not get a sub. I don't know how many times I've sent out my proposal and go back and, oh, here's another proposal from another sub who's cheaper than the one I had in there, and they're containing more scope. Their scope is more inclusive. I have to go in and I have to amend my proposal, and they don't like that because I'm just one guy in their cost sheet, so we have to give the prime contractors an opportunity to succeed and get your number in a timely fashion. I talked about timing, the transmitting of your proposal. It's imperative. It's another assessment of risk reward. I have contractors that I work with. I don't have a problem giving my proposal 3 days ahead of time because I trust them. We've got a good working relationship. I know they're not going to sell my number to the new guy on the block. And then send your proposal in and you wait. During that waiting period, you can call your prime and you can say, hey, how'd I look? He's not going to give you any indication because the job hasn't been let yet. A lot of times a job that hasn't been let, it's over budget. They go back to the drawing board. Well, now the bid becomes an auction. So I don't ever call. I say, thank you for the opportunity. Let me know when you know something. If it's been a month, I'll say, hey, have you heard anything on this project? And I usually know if, I'm watching. Second place, all this work that we put in here, all this work that we put in all the time and the effort. Hey, Tom, I'm sorry. You were just over the other bidder. We went with them. Well, I'm the first loser, and guess what that pays? A big fat goose egg. So that comes out of my overhead for the year. I just spent, 120 man hours and putting this proposal together for nothing, So we move on to the next one, but that's the contracting world.
You got to put some of that cost into your bid or not?
Well, it's going to go in. I got to make it up somewhere. So it's, yeah. So then my overhead value goes up by tick, 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 right? Because that's where that came from. Overhead paid for that. So bonding. There are 3 types of bonds, actually 2. These 2 here, payment and performance, they go hand in hand. I've never seen a client ask for a performance but not a payment bond. So on bid day, you're going to give a bid bond. That's to keep the frivolous offers off the table. They're going to pay a penalty of 5% if they walk. If they turn in a proposal to a client and then they say, well, you were low by 30%, they go, whoa, well, maybe I made a mistake. Well, if they didn't make a justifiable mistake, then they're going to get charged the bid bond amount, which is usually 5% of the bid price. So your bonding company will issue you a bid bond. The other item, if you do not have a bonding company, if you are not a bondable contractor, which never fares well if you're a prime, they will ask you for a cashier's check that will be returned to you after the bid opening. That is not uncommon. After you sign a contract, one of the first things you're going to need to provide to the owner, if you're a prime contractor, general contractor, prime contractor, those terms are used interchangeably, but like I said before, they are distinctly different. Bonding company is going to compensate the owner in case any work performance default by the general contractor. Normally in a project, neither the payment or performance bonds are in play. Sometimes a payment bond may come in if somebody files a lien. You're working for the Corps, so you send in a pay application on April 1st for the work you did for May 1st or March 1st or March 31st. You send it in April. Well, you don't get paid for the money that you spent in March until about June with the Corps. So you've got to have the capital in the bank to keep that machine running, and if you don't, if you bought something, large piece, let's say you bought a big air handler, it cost $250,000 in March. Well, you ordered it in November. Okay, you had to put money down then to order it, to place the order. When it arrives, you're going to pay for it. You're going to install it. When you install it, then you can bill for it, right? So, I mean, there's an 8-month lag for working on a job with the Corps. Corps is very slow in paying, but they normally pay. I can give you examples of when they don't. These are my actual labor values as of July 1st, 2021. As I stated, our contract renews July 1st, 2022. There's a pay raise every year on July 1st. So this is my journeyman hourly wage, $74.26 an hour. Okay, these items are company specific based on my history, workers' comp, general liability insurance. So at the end of the day, a guy works 10 hours on straight time. He's working 410s, let's say. I've got to bill the owner $1,000 for what he did that day to break even. I'm going to pay this guy $800, right? So, of course, first guy in the job's a foreman. He's costing me $86 an hour on straight time. Overtime, he's costing me $113 an hour. And then we have the other general foreman in the contract. If you have a crew of so many, you have to have so many foremen or the general foreman. We don't normally have to pay the general foreman hourly wage unless it's a very large project and we have several crews. Each crew is going to have a foreman. First guy in the crew is a foreman. In our contract, we are currently, and by the Department of Labor, we are allowed a 1-to-1 ratio of journeymen to apprentices. Apprentices, yeah, this is the guy that's just started this year. He was flipping burgers at McDonald's 6 months ago. He doesn't know a whole lot. Can you use him? I mean, is he worth this right here? He is if he's got good oversight. He is if he's got a brain, and he's logical. So onto the DOL. This is the latest Department of Labor listing. So that's 7426. That's north of the 63rd parallel. That's where Local 375 has jurisdiction. That's where 85% of my work is, in this area north of the 63rd latitude. So that work north, and 375 also has jurisdiction at the Valdez terminal. South of the 63rd, that's Anchorage, that's 367. That's their labor rate. That's their package. Again, the 7426 is right here. That's not the overall. You have to add all that in. If you don't add that in, you're missing something and you're going to lose money. That's Juneau down there. So Fairbanks is considerably higher than Anchorage is at the moment. Looks like it's in the pension, which is weird because we have a shared pension between Fairbanks and Anchorage. I don't know why Anchorage would be allowed to give less in the pension package when, anyway. Project, okay. Any questions about the bid preparation process? No, we're going to move on to.
When you get your drawings, do you ever bid on the percentage of the drawings, say they're not 100%, say they're 90% drawings, or?
Are you talking about in a design build environment? Yeah, I will. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the different delivery methods and the variables that come into play with those different types. The scenario that I've laid out so far, that process was a bid build, plan and spec, or what they call design bid build now. They've, I don't know why they should have been bid build, design build. Anyway, so project delivery methods. What I want to show you here are the four different, well, there's three main delivery methods. There's another one I'm going to introduce you to. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I guarantee you're going to see more of it in the future. The plan and spec, this is what we called the bid build, or a design bid build. Plan and spec is what we called it 25 years ago, plan and spec. Design's done, owner contracts with a design firm, design consultants, maybe several. They put the bid set out and then the contractors bid that. That's usually bid, sealed bid competitive, okay? Construction management. That has become popular for various reasons. The owner doesn't have the expertise or the staff to administer the project, so they look to a construction manager. And the most popular type of project delivery under the construction management is a construction manager at risk. It's a little bit different than as an agent. Design build, I love design build. I get to be part of the design. I get to have, my say means something, as we're not going to go through and develop 100%, and then you open up the plans and like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we do that? The project that I was talking about, the 8-bay, I open up the plans, I look at the equipment schedule, and the engineer has specified split case pumps at Eielson. Now I know for a fact that the Eielson maintenance crews don't know anything about split case pumps. So I get a hold of the engineer during the bid phase process. I'm bidding it. I go, I don't understand why you want split case pumps. Why don't we just go with the base mounted like we do on every other one? And his response was, well, right here in the Eielson design guide, it says all large pumps base mounted pumps shall be split case. And I'm like, well, who's defining large? Is that 25 horsepower? Is that 50 horsepower? Is it 75 horsepower? So he made an assessment that the job required split case pumps. So I'm selling the job. I build the job. I get it. I put in split case pumps. I'm going through the walkthrough on training, and the guy from the Eielson maintenance shop, why in the hell did you put split case pumps in here? I'm like, where were you 18 months ago? I didn't want to provide split case pumps. He goes, we don't know how to rebuild those. I go, I know that. The only split case pumps I know, other than the ones that I put in on that job, because that engineer on that project specified them because of his determination of that requirement in the Eielson design guide set. And anyway, then we had a little argument over who was going to maintain those pumps. The only ones I know besides the ones that I put in are at the Eielson power plant on the boiler feed water pumps. And those are about 125 horsepower. So that is large. I mean, I don't know, depends on what world you live in. I do like the design build. That's my preferred method. Integrated project. This is the one I talked to you about. You're going to see a lot more of this because everybody shares the risk. It's not a one-sided. It's not a one-sided transaction. Again, this is just a graphical representation. The plan and spec, bid build. The owner has a contract with the architect and the contractor. And usually all of the administration flows through the owner. So this is heavy admin on the owner's part. It is by far the most popular method, and it is the oldest method that we use for project delivery. Construction manager at risk. You'll see the construction manager and the contractor are part of the team. That team has a contract with the owner, and the owner has a contract with the architect. There should be a dotted line between here and here because there's a lot of integration that happens between the architect, or I shouldn't say, when I say architect, I'm talking about the design consultant as a whole. It doesn't mean just the architect. It's the mechanical consultants, the flat work consultants, the civil guys, the electrical. Design build method. Oops. The owner contracts with the architect and a contractor. So the owner is going to have a design, is going to have narrative. And it's up to the design build team to meet that narrative. In order for that to work, the owner has to actually know what he's asking for, has to know what the actual project that they want to build. They have to, so that's the only downfall sometimes is that the owner doesn't get what they thought they were getting at the end of the job. I did a design build project with it was a joint venture between a local large contractor in Alaska, and they joint ventured with a general contractor out of Washington. And that contractor was actually performing on the job site at Eielson. And that contractor they selected their own design team, which was a design consultant in Seattle. So we're going through the 35, 65, 95% design review, and they've got water lines and call lines embedded within the envelope. Yeah, I'm like, no, the exterior envelope. I'm like, no, we don't do that here. When you team with on a design build project, who you're actually dealing with, because that took a lot of my time. They didn't know anything. They didn't know what a utilidor was. And this was a job at Eielson. They didn't know what's a utilidor. I said, well, actually, we're providing a utiliduct. And anyway, that was painful. The integrated project method. Everybody buys in on the risk and the reward. And it is I think you'll find that you'll see a lot of this in the future. So this is basically the process. You got the design phase, and then you have the bidding phase and the contract award, and then the construction phase. Usually this is not for scale. Usually this is like, it's like one little sliver right here. The wider that light blue band can be, the better the owner is going to get a better proposal. More responsible. I've got time to actually go out and try to save them money. I'm trying to save them money, and at the same time increase my profitability. Construction manager at risk. You see a lot of this. I don't know about in Anchorage, but I know that a lot of the project owners in Fairbanks have move toward this. The construction manager at risk has a direct contact with the owner. The owner has a direct contact with the design consultant team, and there's a lot of integration between the construction manager at risk and the design team, and that takes a lot of the admin and contract development out of the owner's hands when they don't have that expertise or the know-how or the staff or the time. Construction manager at risk then goes out and contracts directly. This might be the civil guy, this might be the general contractor, this might be the, and sometimes it's one big contract with one general contractor, and then he'll have subcontracts under him. Okay, bid build. This is the most popular. Oh, the oldest and most familiar project delivery method. Construction work is awarded to the general contractor with the lowest bid. Design is already done. This method lends itself to a lot of change orders. And change orders aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a change in the work. Change orders you see change orders on almost every project, except for design build. Sometimes it's hard for the owner to entertain the idea of a change order if the builder and the designer are on the same team, unless it's a omission in the narrative. Hey, I thought we were getting I don't know, what oxygen plant here. Well, no, it's not in your narrative. It's not in the bid. So construction manager at risk. Construction manager performs two sequential roles, works as the owner's representative and provides design phase assistance, and then the actual construction after the design phase is completed. Sometimes you start construction, it'll be a sequential type project where part of the job hasn't been designed fully yet, but you'll start phase one, and then you'll move into sequence two as that design is completed and agreed upon. And we've been on several projects like that where we're working over here. We know there's something going on over there, but it is yet. So, and that's, usually a result or the need of a fast track project. Design build. Again, we've had a lot of success with the design build delivery method as a contractor. I like it myself because you get to be part of the overall project and in building the facility. This method will save a lot of time to the owner. They can probably do the same project in a design build method in about 70% of the time that you do a bid build. So that's I like the design build a lot. This is the integrated project delivery. It differs substantially from the other methods, but everybody signs one contract. Everybody's in this for the same risk. Everybody's in for the same reward. So it's not like I can tell you that on a bid build project, at the end of the job, when you're trying to sell the job and something's not working right, it goes to the contractor. Hey, this doesn't work right. Well, this is how we install it. We installed it exactly per the specifications. Right here, section 3 of this division. This is what we did. Well, that's not what we want. Well, the owner, especially out on core projects, is very apt to put the hand down on the contractor. To a point where they're going to hit your bond. It'll get to a point you're realizing less profit than you thought you should have because you're doing something outside of what you thought you were doing as a contractor. So in the design world, the bonding is probably equivalent to your E&O policy. And I know that when I worked as a design engineer that I hardly ever heard of an owner going after a design firm's E&O policy. And the E&O policy premium is pretty substantial. That's one of the reasons I went to school, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and decided I didn't want a stamp. I don't have a stamp. I don't want a stamp. Because if anybody stamps anything and doesn't have E&O policy, that's a huge risk. That's like doing something without bonding or insurance. You know, you open yourself up. And I couldn't justify the cost of a yearly E&O premium. You'll see a lot more of this. It's not very popular yet, but you'll see it. Oh, okay. When I snip this, I cut off. This is 60%, about 60%. About 60% of the projects let at the end of 21 were bid build. This is nationwide. These are nationwide numbers. It's not Alaska numbers. I think in Alaska, you would have the CM, construction manager at risk, and design build would be flopped. And then the integrated project, right at the end of 21, nationwide, it was less than 1%, but you're going to see more of that, I guarantee you. Okay, any questions about project delivery methods? Move on to lessons learned. First, most importantly, money is king, always, always, always. Well, almost always. Every once in a while, you run across a unicorn where the project owner has very little concern for the budget. But those are few and far between. Those are specialty projects that have a specialty need that they need to provide for some reason. But money is king. I have bid MATOC, SATOC type contracts where the owner gives you, you have to be qualified. Okay, so what you do is you offer a proposal on a pretend project, and they'll send this pretend project out to 6 other contractors, and they're going to select 3 of the 6. So your proposal is based on price, quality of your team, your resources available. So you put all this together and they make a choice. Well, I've never seen where price didn't influence and outfactor all the other factors involved. So beware of the marble. These can be your classmates, workmates, your mates. These are the people that take the path of least resistance. These people will cost you time and money and frustration. So I'm sure you guys all know marbles in your world. They are they're not an asset. They're a liability, and usually it's at your cost. So beware of the marble. When I was in college and we were taking, a lot of the college courses you take, you have labs, and when you have labs, you have lab partners. And for some reason, I always got stuck with the marbles. Seems like all the work was up to me, but I don't know. I see those in everyday life in my business as well. Never stop learning. In today's technology, it's so easy. The other day, I took a course online, a webinar, to reinforce what I thought I knew, but it keeps you updated on technology. You guys as engineers, you're professionals. And so much like a doctor has to, keep updated on the latest technology, or a lawyer has to keep up with the latest law so that he's competent, engineers have to do the same thing. I tell my guys in the field this. They journey out after a 5-year apprenticeship and they think, I'm done. Well, you're not done. There's so much more to learn. And if you want to keep yourself in the asset column, then you need to continue learning. So I think that's a big one. Never stop learning. Never stop taking the opportunity to make yourself better. Ignorant doesn't mean you're stupid. And arrogant doesn't mean you know what you're doing. Ignorant just means you're unaware. Ignorance can be fixed fairly easily. You just make yourself aware, if that's what you want to make that something you're not ignorant about. Arrogance has a place, but through diplomacy, it should be used sparingly. Don't confuse arrogance with confidence. Now, ignorant and arrogant at the same time, that's a very deadly combination. And in my world, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of big general contractors are going to come in and I'm going to show you how this is done. I see a lot of it all the time. So you learn how to diplomatically deal with those people. My mentor, the Gibber, he was very, very arrogant, very boisterous. That was just his character, So a lot of people took him the wrong way a lot of times. If they got to know him, they'd know he's really just a big teddy bear with a loud bark. Acknowledge your weaknesses and react accordingly. Everybody's got weaknesses. Do you want to do something about it? Do you need to do something? Is it affecting your ability to be a competent professional? If so, you should do something about it. And revel in your strengths. Like I said, this week I've already taken a webinar. I have another one yet this week to take. And they vary from item to item. The other one was on geothermal pump design. And the one I'm taking later this week is an update on the Ukraine issue. You might think, well, why does he care so much about it? Well, it affects me. I'd like to see where this is going. Nobody knows where it's going yet, but I'd like to see what the development is. So it's a 1-hour webinar on supply chain issues and Ukraine's mess. Yeah, you can. Some of those, I don't really pay attention to that. Of course, I need 32 hours of CEU a year to maintain my mechanical administrator's license, my general contractor's license, my certificate of fitness, my master plumber's license. So every year I have to take 32 hours of CEUs. I don't count those little 1-hour webinar things. I usually do a code update. And speaking of code, so you guys get your degrees in engineering, you go out in the design world for vertical construction, and how many code classes have you been offered in college? None. So when you're a design engineer in vertical construction, your Bible is the code. If you're an engineer that doesn't know the code, you're going to do a very bad job, and it's going to be a liability to your client. So I brought an example to make that point. When I was in college, there were required courses, and one of them was, when I got my course schedule, I would look at the required books. I'd go to the bookstore and I'd get the books as early as I could, and I would review the books. This particular one I opened up and I thought, there's nothing in here that's going to be of any use to me whatsoever, but it's required, differential equations. Okay, so I had already had Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3. And by the middle of Calc 3, I'm like, I'm not going to use any of this crap. My time would be better spent learning something that I can actually use in the real world. So the last math course I needed was, I think it was 302. I can't remember, differential equations. So I've looked through here. I'm like, oof, man. So I go to class the first day. This guy, younger than me, I went to college 10 years out of high school. And he's an Oriental fellow. And he comes in, he goes, hello, my name is Boping Jiao. I'm like, oh shit. So I immediately go to the courses and see if I can switch courses. No, if I don't take this course, it's going to set me behind in graduating. It's going to cost me at least a semester. So I took this course and got absolutely 0 out of it. Well, except for one of the 2 C's I got in college. That book there will probably not be going home with me. This, however, fundamentals of heat and mass transfer. This is very important. It was important to me, and there was a lot of stuff. So every page in here is either highlighted or written on. It's tabbed, because I read every page in this book, because this is a subject matter that was going to make me a better engineer. Does everybody have one of these? Okay, when I found this tool, I use this weekly. This is within arm's reach of my plans table, and my computer. I use this one. This one I've had since, yes.
For the people online, can you say what it is?
Oh, this is the B&G system size calculator. This is one of the greatest tools ever invented as far as I'm concerned. When I'm doing a plan review to see if I'm going to do the job and I'm looking for the quality of the design, this helps me. When I see a 3/4 inch pipe run into a unit heater with 250 MBH, I know something's wrong, you know. And if I see a lot of that, then I know that, but that's a great tool. Somebody also makes a ductilator that was fashioned after that, but I don't know who, I can't remember who came up with that, who developed that specifically, but it's, if you don't have one, make sure you get one. You should, everybody, that should be just right. Here's your diploma, here's your system sizer, you know. I lost my place here. Okay, acknowledge your weaknesses. And that's important. I struggle with, one of my weaknesses, I have a very low tolerance for stupidity. So sometimes it causes me to get out of character. And so I've been working on how to be more tolerant of that. And absolutely revel in your strengths. Use those when you're on a task. This is really important. I know a lot of engineering types are really not that social. They're not good communicators, but really strive to be a good communicator. And it's so easy in today's world. You know, you can text or you can email. You don't have to pick up the phone. I know that the younger generation, they're it's like they're allergic to the phone. They don't want to, I got to make a phone call? What? No, please. You know, can I send them a TikTok? So I think that's important. That's something I've learned over, and it's been reinforced over the years, is strive to be a good communicator. Question things that don't make sense. Here's an electric vehicle hooked up to an electric vehicle charger connected to a diesel generator running. You know, so when you see stuff like that, it's like go ahead and question it. I tell my guys when they're out on the field installing systems, if you see something that doesn't make sense, question it. Just because it's on the plans doesn't mean it's correct, you know. This is something that I was introduced to about 3 months ago, and I still can't wrap my head around this. This is something else that doesn't make sense. Tesla's market cap in the stock market is over its value. It's actually, this is an older slide. I checked this morning, it's $1.14 trillion. Tesla Corporation, their market cap in the stock market is 1.14 trillion. The other 10 leading car manufacturers in the world is less than Tesla's market cap. In 2021, Tesla delivered 936,000 vehicles. That's what they produced. These other 10 manufacturers, 63 million, down 10 million from 2 years ago. This is a reduction in productivity based due to COVID. So just, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. How can Tesla have more market cap and produce less actual product, tangible product? Well, I think Tesla's stock today is about $11.50. Ford's is $15 a share. And that's where it's at. People have faith that Tesla is going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today. Basically buying futures. Some stuff just doesn't make sense. I can't figure this out. That's important, so I did it twice. Money is king, always, always, always. You know, that's the great motivator and the driver. I don't think it's sad, but it's real. You know, if you're a contractor, you're in the contractor to increase profitability. I've known contractors in the past, I've got $200 million on the books. Well, yeah, but their profitability is down to 3.5%. I'd rather do 20 million at 11% than 200 million at 3%. Much rather. The Poindexter. I don't know, when you hear the word Poindexter, what comes to mind, but out in the field, the Poindexter is the guy who's book smart and world stupid. You know, the guy who could do a differential equation but couldn't find the bathroom with a map. So be aware of the Poindexter. My last engagement with a Poindexter was about 6 months ago. I was doing a project out at Wainwright. It was a very simple project. We had to cut the pavement, pull the lids on the utilidor, replace all the utilities in the utilidor, rebuild it, put it back in, get it in operation. And the quality control representative that was reviewing the submittals rejected my submittal on how we were going to chlorinate the piping before putting it into use. There was nothing wrong with our method. We'd done it several times. His problem was that I had included a copy of AWWA 651 in my submittal. And he wanted to remind me that I couldn't do that because it was copyrighted. So these are the people that are worried about running out of things to worry about. And you're going to come across these people and you just try to avoid them. Sometimes you can't. So he turned down my submittal and wanted me to resubmit. And I said, I was on the phone. I go, I don't understand why you turned this down. We've used this standard forever. He goes, well, you can't publish the standard in your submittal. You can reference it, but you can't publish it. Look on page 2. It says right there, it's copyrighted. It's like, I can't talk to you anymore. I called his boss. We didn't change anything. We didn't accomplish anything through all that dialogue and discussion, but be aware of the Poindexter. I was 3 weeks ago. I was I have a home in Palm Springs, and I was visiting Palm Springs with my younger granddaughters. And I'm driving along, and I'm trying to, I'm talking to my granddaughters, and one of them, they're twins. And the older, the Kate, and she says, "Grandpa, you're a boomer." I'm like, "What? You're a boomer?" I go, "Do you mean a baby boomer?" She said, "I don't know what a baby boomer is, but you're a boomer." So we get to our destination. I pull out my tool, and I go to my Urban Dictionary. I look up boomer, and it means grumpy old people. I didn't know what a boomer was. So yeah, so I'm a boomer. This is a question that every engineer ought to ask themselves. And this is one of the reasons that I am not an engineer, is I work on a design, and I know that I could spend more time and make it better, more cost effective, and do a service to the client. However, I was told that was beyond my purview. I was to simply make it work without regard for budget or cost effectiveness, or was it the best system I could possibly design. So when you as a designer, you probably have some proprietary software that helps you decide which pump or which air handler to use when you're sizing systems. But as long as you build specifications so that there's freedom of contract to use his expertise, I have, when it comes to pumps, Glenn, I'm a fan of 2 teams, and I go to those 2 teams religiously, the red team and the green team. I won't say who they are, Glenn, but I have found through installing systems that the other brands are, you have issues with them, and the representatives don't stand behind it. So I pretty much, no matter what the equipment schedule says, unless it says no substitutes, which, by the way, when that happens, you're doing a disservice to your client, unless that's a requirement on their part. Allow the contractor to save the client money because they have methods and means if they're a seasoned contractor to do just that. And that's why the open competitive or the sealed competitive bid process works so well and it's been in place for so long. Oof. RFI. So it took me a while to figure this out. My RFIs get answered so much easier if I pose the problem and a solution at the same time. As an engineer, when you see a solution provided, don't forget to ask yourself, why does he want to go this way or they want to go this way? Make sure that it's not in the spirit of creating a change order, okay? Make sure that it's in line with actually providing a viable solution to the issue at hand, okay? So I used to send in RFIs all the time. Hey, this is screwed up. What do you want to do about it? Well, that's not very productive. Hey, I see an issue here. I don't think that was the design intent. I think this should be blah, blah, blah. And that's how I present an RFI. So hopefully the contractors that you're working with when you're in the submittal phase or in answering the RFIs, don't be afraid to ask the contractor for some assistance, what they see in the field. A lot of times they've been up against this very same issue on other projects. Try and be diplomatic when possible. Sometimes it's impossible, but diplomacy can go a long way, especially both ways, especially when you're dealing with contractors. A lot of times contractors have big egos. Their heads are this big, they barely fit through the door, you know, they because they know everything already. So, but try to be diplomatic. I can give you 100 examples of undiplomatic behavior and how it resulted in an unfavorable result at the end. But there's a lot of value to moving toward diplomacy when you're in some kind of a transaction. Redundant information in your design, that's a killer. Probably going to result in a change order. Owners don't like change orders. When they see change orders, they think the contractor's a bad guy, bad entity. I don't mean to be sexist, sorry. Be careful with your redundant information because most of the time it's not going to work out in your favor. If you specify a piece of equipment and then in the division that explains that equipment, just make sure it reinforces it and you don't have it somewhere else in the plans, because if you go back into your design, you change something and then there's conflicting information, it's always a head scratcher to the contractor, and then there's an RFI, and then there's possibly a change order. We talked about the E&O policy. How many times have you guys seen a client charge an E&O policy on a design firm? I've never seen it, but I can cite examples on a yearly basis of when the owner went after the bond on a contractor. So this very rarely ever happens unless a bridge collapses and it was due to a design fault, you know, then they're going to go after E&O because those pockets are too deep to fill to recover. So I touched on this a little bit, proprietary specifications and equipment selections. The no substitute wording is going to cost your client money and limit the freedom, the contractor freedom to provide an equivalent. So if the owner says, I want this, no substitutes, well, that's on him. He's ready to write the check out for that. But if you don't have to, it's not a good idea. Proprietary tools, we talked about that. When I worked at USKH, all of our pump selections were made with the B&G application. Software. It wasn't an application then, it was software. back when I was in engineering school, we had computer programming, and we learned a language called Fortran 77. It came with a boot disk, a floppy. That's how you booted the computer to tell it to what to do. So things have come a long way. When I was in my later years of college, there was a magazine called The Computer Shopper. It was this huge magazine. It had hundreds of pages, and they didn't, it was years before the cow boxes came out. Remember the Gateway cow boxes? They looked like a cow. They were black and white. But if you wanted a personal computer, you had to build your own, and you would build your components through this computer shopper. And they would mail the parts to you, and then you could build your own computer. Wheels fell off the bus. 727 days about since coronavirus restrictions last began and the global shutdown. Everybody lost their minds. And we're still, we still see the fallout. I guess there's a new variant that's supposed to be, I saw that on the news. Stealth, is that what it is? Yeah. It's I don't know. Is it more contractive or no? Nobody knows. It's brand new. Here we go again. Yeah, good. Well, I can tell you that in my world, it hasn't affected my world as much as it has others. I know that. My plumbers can install systems from home. So we weren't working from home. We were actually out on the job site. There was a time where, and you have clients that because of risk aversion, the lawyers, we had to work in masks, and everybody had, it was just some of the stuff we had to go through. Well, guess what? When I bid the job, I didn't have all those procedures in place. So guess where that comes from? Comes from the profit column of my markup. So this is back here. This is where everything happened. Everything was crazy. And really the numbers were pretty low. End of the year, 19, we had a surge. Everybody thought the world was going to end. And again, and then the latest, this is the Omicron, unless you're Biden, it's Omicron then. But the Omicron virus, and now we're going to have another one, the stealth. I don't pay attention too much to the news because it's it depends on who you're watching and what kind of news you're going to get. But anyway, it's a real effect. It is, and to me, it's being able to get stuff on time. I don't think we'll do that. Of course, the latest consideration, Russia's invasion on Ukraine. You probably want to give it some thought and see how it's going to affect your world. Again, in my world, it is going to have an effect. And I have a duty to my clients to let them know, Glenn, I asked you for pump, it was 6 weeks last time I got one of those, and now it's 21. And they want the job done in 18 weeks. Well, we can do it, but we won't have a pump in place, So my point is that the owner's expectations haven't caught up with the real world scenario. And so inflation, it's just starting. You're going to see a lot of that. See a lot of it. I sold my home in Palm Springs because the market had peaked out. I bought it as an investment. So I bought a lot in Florida because Florida is much more politically in line with my attitude than California is. So we're moving to Florida, and I bought a lot, which means I'm going to build, but I'm not going to build right away, not till we get this under control and interest rates. And well, I'm not anyway. Supply chain issues also, but interest rates, you're going to see them over 5% easily by the end of the year. I don't know where we are today. I think there was another rate hike, but those, project owners are funding these projects. It's going to have an effect. You're going to be able to buy less tomorrow than you are today because of these two issues, inflation and interest rates. as a contractor, I make sure that I'm fully aware, or I have a pretty good idea of what to expect tomorrow and the next day. Like I said, I don't know what July 1st, 2023, 2022 labor values are going to be, but I have a pretty good indication through hypothesis. I know about where it's going to be, so I can continue to bid jobs, even though I don't know what the rate is. Equipment prices and material prices, man, they're just climbing. So that is of much interest to me because it really affects my world. Supply chain issues. Any questions? That's the end of the presentation. I hope I've been able to give you guys something to think about and things that I've learned, and you have a better understanding of the proposal process that a contractor has to go through. The big thing is, so I said that we did several small projects last year. Every one of those is a smaller process to go through, but we still go through the same process to provide a proposal, large projects. So I'm going to say 65 to 70% of my time is spent toward offering proposals. The rest of my time is spent running the company, acting as a general manager. I've kind of pushed off some of the project management duties that I've had in the past. Those ate up a lot of my time, but let's see, I think that is about it. Any questions?
Yeah, I know you mentioned like when you look at a plan set, you can tell between like what's going to be good design or bad design, what's easy to work with. I know you mentioned a couple items, but could you elaborate more on like kind of when you initially look at that plan set, what kind of items you're looking for to be like?
Okay, the first thing I do when I get a set of plans is I go right to the M sheets and I see if I can identify if I'm familiar with that designer or with that designer firm. From there, so red flag goes up if I never heard of these people before in my life, you know. So then I'm going to do a more detailed review of those. I'm going to go right to the details. Okay, those are usually boilerplate. Every firm's got their boilerplate details that they rely on. And if it is an engineering firm that's not in Alaska, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see that, because the way we build things here is way different than the way they build things down in the States. Not to 100%, but there's a couple things that I don't know how many times I made aware to the owner during the submittal process that glycol seals were not specified in the pumps. So would you like me to provide some extra seals with this pump? Or would you like glycol seals? You know, it took a long time for that to get through. You know, a lot of our systems utilize propylene, Ilson, they use ethylene, you know, and it takes a special seal on those pumps. That's just an example. So red flag goes up when I'm not familiar with the firm. I've been in the business long enough to know almost everybody in Alaska, the design firms. You know, some people shift around. I have red flags on certain particular people. If I see their initials in the title block, I'm like, okay. Because I know that I've had issues in the past and I know how they respond to the contractor. So did that answer it? Okay. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this a little earlier, Tom. So you talked a little bit about needs and methods for contractors and when you start to look at that as a responsibility. So when we design something, a lot of times, you know, the engineer's responsibility is to make sure that it's buildable, you know, and it's constructible. But how much responsibility is it the contractors to make sure that they're including in their bid at bid time needs and methods, or asking that it can be built at that time so that it doesn't turn into a change order later in the game? Or what is the good engineering practice that we should, at what level should we determine needs and method versus engineering? Where should that line go? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Absolutely. So, you know, it really depends on the delivery method. Remember I talked about that blue band? It's really, really narrow on a bid build project. And if I see something, like let's say I see a code violation, this doesn't work, this is not correct, I don't have any qualms about getting on the phone. If I know who those initials are, calling that design firm and saying, hey, there's an issue here. You need to resolve this before it goes out, before the bid date, and they'll issue an amendment. That's what a responsible contractor is going to do. So remember that everything that we do on a bid build project, all that could be for first loser, second place, and nothing, you don't bear any fruit from all that effort, right? So you can only spend so much time, and you only have so much time to put together a proposal. A lot of those things that you're talking about may not be acknowledged or recognized until you go into the submittal phase. You know, I do a very thorough review. I read every word of Division 23, 24, the stuff 22, the stuff that's in my scope. I don't read Division 7. I probably won't even look at it. I look at Division 1 and I look at Division 2. And as a responsible contractor, it is your duty and obligation to make aware any significant faults and deficiencies that you may see during the bid process. Absolutely. If I have a client that's open to a VE discussion, I'm happy to talk about a VE discussion, you know, value engineering. The Corps actually, through all their faults, they've actually got a pretty good value engineering program. They're willing to split the cost savings with the contractor. So in a design build process, you'd take that on your own. You come to the design team with an idea. Hey, we did this over here, worked really well. So as an example, we were doing a design build project for a 168-man dorm at Eielson, brand new dorm. We were demolishing 3 other buildings to build this one building. And it was a bit of a change to their format to meet the new military standards for dormitories. And this design firm, the team that we teamed up with, the contractor that we teamed up with, this was the out-of-state project that I was talking about. Their engineer, they were from Seattle. They said, hey, you know, we could save a lot of money if we used a chilled beam design. So they start going down the chilled beam road. And I, through my years of experience with the guy who was head of Eielson Mechanical, Bill Arnold, he would not allow chilled beam ever. There's no way. So I let them know. I said, hey guys, this is not going to fly. They're not going to buy this. Well, the problem is that Bill Arnold and his crew, the Eielson specific personnel, don't get to see the proposals on bid day. So the Corps guy in Huntsville selects the contractor. They select us with the chilled beam design. Guess why? Because our price was cheaper. Money is king. Our price was cheaper because we used a chilled beam design. Well, we go into the submittal phase. Bill Arnold gets a hold of it. He looks at it. He goes, oh, we're not doing chilled beam. I want air handlers and reheat coils, and I want fin tube on the outside walls. I'm like, okay, my duct just went from 6-inch to 18-inch. Chilled beam, you're going to use a medium pressure duct. Now we're going to use low pressure duct. We're going to use a conventional method. And they came out and they asked for a design change. This is through the design build project process. And so I get my numbers from my sheet metal guy, I get my numbers from my insulator. It's going to take more insulation. I assemble numbers. I put in a change order, and they said, no, that's unreasonable. I said, well, tell me where it's unreasonable. I gave you all the backup. Here are cost sheets. Here's what was in the bid. Here's what you want. So instead of entertaining that discussion, they gave me a unilateral directive to proceed. So I'm, as a contractor, I mean, this is like a $800,000 change, you know? And so I fought for 2.5 years. I got 2 3-ring, 3-inch notebooks of battle paperwork with the Corps over that. I finally got paid 78 cents on the dollar at the end of 2.5 years from my claim, but sometimes people don't listen, you know. That's the point of that. Sometimes you just can't get through to the right person. Had I known at the end of the job, I should have called Bill Arnold. Said, hey, just so you know, I don't know what he could have done. He doesn't see it until the job is let, until it's awarded. So, and he had the authority to say no at that point, but he didn't have the accountability because he wasn't part of the process of selecting the contractor. So, any other questions? Yes.
There was one online that was asking about with the submittal process with commodities and lead times, and the submittal process taking some time to get things approved. Do you have any recommendations to the engineers on how to handle resubmittal comments or any way to kind of expedite the submittal process to allow you to get your material quicker?
I think in today's, I come from the days where we order submittal material and it arrived in the mail in a glossy. And then we assemble 3-ring binders and turn those in. And back then there was a design firm that wouldn't allow you to onesie twosie submittals. You had to have a complete submittal package before they would accept it. So we've come a long way. I mean, we're talking fax machine, it was a crappy copy and that was your submittal. Well, anymore, with the way the submittal process is, I don't know how we could expedite any more than it is. It's from my experience, it's pretty, it's pretty efficient. I don't know what they have specific examples of.
I think they're kind of wondering more along the line of when the engineer reviews the submittals.
Yeah.
Rather than resubmit.
Yeah.
And we do the approved as noted. Or are there ways that the engineer can expedite getting to the end product with the contractor?
Yeah.
Is gonna, rather than doing the 2 weeks back and forth stuff.
Yeah.
What can the engineers do to help get stuff ordered quickly?
I think number one is to allow submittal review for long lead items. That should happen on every job. As a contractor, I'm going to identify every piece of equipment or piece of material that has a longer than expected lead, or what I think the engineer or the owner may think is a reasonable lead time. Those I want to submit like a week within signing the contract with the general contractor. I'm going to push to get those in. And then once I get those, and sometimes you got to work through, take the case of the split case pumps. I went back and forth for 5 weeks on that deal, trying to, this is silly, but that's what they want. Well, I thought that's what anyway, I went back and forth. It was a 5-week process where I could finally place that order. And what's the difference in lead time between a split case pump and a base mounted pump, Glenn?
Weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I think that being open to a more efficient process rather than just stamp it, give some feedback to the contractor. Where is this submittal deficient? What would you like to see? So some openness toward that, that wasn't the design intent. You're going down this, maybe the wrong path here. What we'd like to see and what we had in the design or what we intended to have in the design is this.
So are you saying, so like, per se, there's like a unit heater or something on there and you submitted a unit heater submittal per se. And the unit heater submittal you gave me was the wrong model, but the right model number was on there. And I said, hey, this wasn't the design intent, but this unit heater is. So no exceptions taken, provided you provide this unit heater model instead of that one. Would that have been? Absolutely. Would you have been okay with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And that way it wouldn't have required.
It's
that point or something.
Yeah, it's along the same lines of submitting an RFI with a solution to the problem that you're posing. That's all in the spirit of expediting those processes. Ultimately we'll want to build stuff, really. So yeah.
One more. What are good ways that engineers can communicate with contractors, and what are the pitfalls that you see regarding the chain of command and stuff like that? when engineers talk directly with contractors?
I-
The contractor point.
I honestly, I will field a call from an engineer every day, every minute. I have, as long as the general contractor, I'll pick a phone. Hey, this is blah, 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 Design Alaska. Okay. What project? All right. Yep. Okay. I will call my general contractor and said, hey, I'm in direct contact with the engineer. 9 times out of 10, there's not going to be an issue. Sometimes you get the big head. No, you're going to go through me, and it happens, but it depends on your particular contractor. I have no qualms about fielding questions direct. Call my cell phone, I'll get an answer if I can, if I'm able, if it's within my capacity, and we'll move on. Absolutely.
I'm assuming you're of the same mind that the engineer can't give you directions to move forward on anything that has cost involved without the owner's approval.
I'm sorry.
The engineer won't give you direction to move forward on something without cost.
Right. Yeah. If it's a change cost item, then we have to go down that, obviously, because the engineer's not writing the check. The owner's writing the check, or somebody's writing the check.
I just want to make sure the young engineers online understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Unless you're willing to get your checkbook out, then yeah, you really can't. You don't have the authority to approve a change order, or
So we can have a conversation with you, but still needs to go through the right channels.
Yep.
To make sure that is approved.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can't. I mean, you can't go outside the chain of command, especially when there's money involved or contractual issues involved. And any contract that the owner has with the general contractor, there's flow down. That all flows down all the way down to if to my suppliers, to my subs. It's all. A lot of times they never ask for it, but a lot of times, if it's a client that or an owner that I've worked with several times, I pretty know what's in the agreement between the general contractor and the owner.
So you made a really good statement from a contractor's point of view when you put an RFI in.
Yeah.
One, make a statement, say what the question is, because some RFIs come in that don't actually have a question, they just make a statement.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for young, for engineers, if there isn't a statement. But the other one is, you're in the field, you're out there, you're looking at the issue, you see what it is. And so when you provide a solution that actually is beneficial.
Yeah.
But you're right, we do have to look at it.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really,
Yeah, absolutely. You want to look at it and make sure that contractor's not steering you toward the path of substantiating a high change order. Make sure it's an actual solution to the problem at hand, and it's a reasonable solution. So you do have to question that sometimes, unfortunately.
oh, well, you should look at everything with an open mind.
Yeah.
Take a second, you should always look at it from every point of view before you just walk into the solution.
Right.
But
And
it's still a really good point to say, provide the solution.
so there are contractors that will bid work under the actual costs, knowing or with the understanding that there are going to be change orders led on the project, and that's where they hoped to get to at least net zero at the end of the job.
And it happens a lot on the design bid build.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
actually a lot of contractors. Unfortunately, a lot of contractors do go with that bid. Intent.
Yep.
Intent in a design bid build.
Yep.
Because it's a low cost, and low cost wins more.
Right. And so, and that's why the advent of the design build process came along, to share some of the risk and all right. Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you. I struggled